Antes de darmos início ao evento, gostaríamos de reforçar o seguinte disclaimer. As manifestações expressas por integrantes dos quadros da Fundação Getúlio Vargas e por convidados que participam dos eventos e transmissões online representam exclusivamente as opiniões dos seus autores e não refletem, necessariamente, a posição institucional da FGV. Após este vídeo de aviso, solicitamos a autorização para o uso da imagem e da voz dos palestrantes mediante manifestações de concordância, tais como um aceno de cabeça ou outro gesto de aprovação. Agradecemos sua participação e desejamos um excelente evento.
Think we can open our cameras.
Can we start?
Yes.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is the first colloquium under the auspices of the Brazil-China Consortium of Law Schools. I am Professor Antonio Herman Benjamin. I am the Chief Justice of the National High Court of Brazil, STJ, the institution that convened the first meeting of law schools of both countries, where we established the consortium. I am pleased to see this first event. There will be others. Still 102 this year. Professor Oscar Villena and Professor Shi will talk about those events. One of them that I am personally involved in organizing is on the environment, but there will be another one on trends and the future of law schools in the world. The event today is on trade and law. We all know that we live in very difficult times. I would not say interesting times, but perhaps interesting from the perspective that we need to strengthen the regulatory framework, both international and national, in order to facilitate trade among our nations. Civilizations are based, they are born, and eventually they die, depending on how well they conduct their international relations and especially trade. Trade is not just commerce. Trade implies exchange of goods and service, but also trade implies fairness, predictability, the reduction of risk, and several other values that are core to modern societies. At the end of the day, trade is about partnerships with different cultures, different nations, different people, and win-win situations in which every nation, every group is benefited by those exchanges. Let me use this opportunity as the Chief Justice of the STJ to thank the two institutions that have accepted to be the secretariat until next year of the consortium. First, the Getúlio Vargas Foundation, and we have here the Dean of the Law School, one of the most prestigious law schools in Brazil and Latin America, ranked very high, a lot of prestige. The same thing with our Chinese counterpart, the China University of Political Science and Law, one of the top universities and law schools in China and the world. I have had recently the opportunity to briefly visit the university. I was highly impressed with the quality of the facilities, the quality of the scholarship that is generated there. In fact, it's not just one law school. I was surprised by several law schools in the same complex. It's gigantic in the structure, but gigantic in terms of law teaching and law research. I think I'll stop here because we are much more interested in the discussion on this very timely topic. Just two minor things that Professor Scavilena will mention at the very end. And unfortunately, I have to disconnect since I need to go to the airport. The first is that the Getúlio Vargas Foundation has already prepared, I would call a draft of our website, the website of the consortium. The Getúlio Vargas Foundation also agreed to work on the logo for the consortium. As you know, we are organizing this event almost anonymously because we don't have a logo. We just mentioned that it's the consortium, but for branding, it's important that we developed the Brazilian institutions and the Chinese institutions a logo for the consortium. Thank you very much, and I wish you a very productive first colloquium of the consortium. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, and I hope everyone is well. I would like to thank you, Ministro Herman Benjamin. As he mentioned in advance, he will not be with us physically or digitally, but in spirit, because he has to return to Brasilia immediately. But I just will pass through the next table. But before that, I would like to say that even in our best wishes, we would not, or the worst wishes, we would not imagine that this webinar would take place in a moment where the trade, commerce, the trade laws would be in such a challenge at this time, and the position of China and Brazil to work to stabilize this legislation, this international regime is of extremely importance. So this webinar is happening in a moment that couldn't be more of opportunity to do it. So I would pass to the first panel immediately in the sense to save time. And just to tell you that we have already a website that is organized. I think always checked in English and Portuguese, and the Chinese version will come from our colleagues with the translation of it. And our first mission after this webinar is to organize the next panel that probably will be on the topic of climate change. So thank you very much, and let's move to the next panel. Hello? So the next panel, we will have here Professor Shi. Would you be willing to say some words? Perhaps Professor Shi seems to be here. Should we start with Professor Michel Hatton?
Yeah, let's begin.
Okay. So the next section will be on legal strategies amid to global trade tensions. So I will give the floor to Professor Michel Hatton Sanchez Badin from FGV.
Thank you, Professor Oscar. Thank you all for being here. I will just share my screen, ask you to wait for a moment. Okay. I have it in the right mode. Okay. Is it working for you all?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm truly delighted to take part in this inaugural webinar of the Brazil-China Law School Consortium. This initiative offers a valuable space, bringing our institutions together to exchange ideas and strengthen academic cooperation at a moment, as our previous speakers just mentioned, when such dialogue could not be more timely. Today's theme speaks directly to the profound transformations underway in the international system, and it also connects closely to my own research agenda at FGV. We are living this moment where the economic and legal front, we can observe, just to mention a few, an erosion of many of the structures that we have in the international systems. And I call this moment winds over shifting sands. That is a period marked by strategic wars, financial crisis, waves of anti-globalization discourse, major health emergencies, and escalating impact of the climate crisis, the topic of the next webinar in this consortium. This shift demands new responses and governance dynamics. In this context, Brazil and China are not just relevant players. Their importance lies not only in the size of their economies, but also in the territories they encompass, the population they represent, and the cultural perspectives and visions they bring to the global stage. On the economic legal front, we observe, just to name a few, this erosion of the international institutions, arrangements, the intensification of national risk resilience policies, mounting pressures for decoupling, reshoring, and friendshoring, as we recently get measures from an important player in the global stage, from the United States, and in some countries, increasing creativity in the design and use of unilateral restrictive measures. Brazil occupies a distinctive position in this scenario. It's an emerging economy, a major exporter of food and energy, and an actor able to engage in dialogue across the developing country divide. Our approach operates in three main dimensions I've mentioned here: the domestic legal measures, and the current moment is looking for financial support for strategic sectors, regulatory adjustments, and export-oriented tax incentives in order to face this challenge of restriction in important partners from the country. We are also engaging consistently in diversifying bilaterally, in diversifying our supply sources and chains, prioritizing critical sectors, and leveraging agreements to sustain trade flows. At the multilateral level, in which China has been an important partner, we look for active participation in forums such as the BRICS, advocating for a more inclusive global trading system, and defending the multilateral trade rules. Our relationship with China, Brazil's main trade partner since 2009, is a strategic pillar for how we position ourselves within this evolving global system. This partnership is anchored in approximately 120 bilateral agreements and in a 10-year plan strategic that was renovated about 3 years ago in a plan that goes up to 2031 and encompass political and legal cooperation, including the joint position in multilateral forums. It includes economic cooperation with an emphasis on diversification and innovation, looking at important and strategic industrial sectors and technological partnerships in renewable energy and the digital economy. It also highlights the importance of our cooperation in science and technology, including the 2032 Space Cooperation Plan, and one of the most important cooperation projects that we have, that is the CBERS satellite program. All of this has been coordinated through COSBA, that is a permanent high-level commission co-chaired by the vice president of both countries. Chinese investments in Brazil now extend far beyond its earlier focus on mining and energy. It has moved decisively into infrastructure, such as high-speed rails projects, port modernization, and urban mobility systems, creating new logistical corridors that can integrate Brazil more deeply into global trade flows. In technology, Chinese companies have partnered with Brazilian firms in areas such as telecommunications, 5G deployment, and smart city initiatives. In renewable energy, investments span wind, solar, and biomass projects, contributing to Brazil's clean energy matrix and aligning with global decarbonization goals. In the digital economy, Chinese venture capital has increasingly supported Brazilian startups in e-commerce, fintechs, and artificial intelligence, fostering innovation ecosystems and expanding access to global markets. One of our key research lines at FGV today focus precisely on the electric vehicle value chains between Brazil and China, examining national policies that supported bilateral coordination and the private sector initiatives. This diversification suggests that Brazil-China economic relationship is moving from a primarily resource-based exchange towards an increasingly multi-layered, innovation-oriented partnership, reflecting both countries' new economic agendas and their shared interests in positioning themselves competitively with emerging global value chains, while reinforcing each other's development. We also undertake a very important partnership at the multilateral level. Brazil and China have worked closely together, advancing new agendas while sustaining key long-standing priorities. Both countries have advocated for reforming agricultural subsidies and for developing an investment facilitation framework. These are two central items on the WTO negotiating agenda. They remain strong defenders of the special and differential treatment for developing countries. That is a hard-won achievement in multilateral trade system. More recently, They have set important precedents in challenging the arbitrary unilateral measures, including high-profile cases against abusive tariffs, thereby reinforcing and coordinating their use of the dispute settlement system to safeguard the integrity of the multilateral trade agenda. Beyond the WTO, Brazil and China are also known in supporting different forms of alternative dispute settlement towards the peaceful coordination of the countries at the global level. Brazil and China have supported for trade the creation of complementary structures for peaceful resolution of trade disputes. They played a key role in establishing the multi-party interim appeal arbitration arrangement, which preserves the functioning of a two-tier dispute settlement process at the WTO through interim arbitration. Both countries are notable for their use of bilateral consultations and mediation. They just have one case at the WTO panel level. They rely on direct dialogue to resolve their trade frictions before they scale. Under the BRICS framework, they are also exploring internal dispute resolution mechanisms among member states to reduce reliance on external adjudicatory bodies and to strengthen the group's collective capacity to manage trade-related tensions. So what we see is that Brazil-China partnership extends far beyond trade, reflecting a shared commitment to addressing global challenge. Together, they can promote a reform of the global governance, advance sustainable development and the clean energy transition. They collaborate on space exploration and technology. They strengthen agriculture and infrastructure linkages that are important at the moment for securing their capacities for food and for energy transition. They shape the governance of artificial intelligence, advocating for inclusive and ethical regulatory frameworks, not only within the BRICS, but in different multilateral forums. So looking ahead, I would like to highlight three core areas with strong potential for advancing joint initiatives between Brazil and China, and but not in our consortium, areas in which academics and practitioners, like all of us here, can also contribute. The first is deepening this strategic alignment, articulating a shared vision in global governance reform, trade rulemaking, and sustainable development, aligning diplomatic positions and sectorial policies to amplify influence in the multilateral arena. The second pillar would be innovation and the green economy, combining Brazil's renewable energy potential and biodiversity with China's capacity for technological scaling and green infrastructure to accelerate low carbon transition and generate broader technological benefits. That is a priority for both countries. And thirdly, navigating geopolitical headwinds while maintaining economic stability and sovereignty, preserving strategic autonomy, diversifying partnerships, and ensuring legal and institutional reliance in a more fragmented global order. These dimensions, strategic alignment, green innovation, and resilient navigation of global tensions, offer a roadmap for the next phase of Brazil-China cooperation and a clear role for the academic and professional community through research, dialogue, and policy engagement. In sum, the key takeaways stand out from the Brazil-China experience is their capacity for adaptive legal frameworks, updating their domestic and the international instruments they deal with to address evolving trade and investment challenges. The capacity in their resilient partnership that manage today a robust trade volume, but also empowers diversified investments and the capacity to move beyond this commodity-based relationship. And thirdly, this proactive multilateral engagement shaping agendas, defending dispute settlement mechanisms, and reinforcing the multilateral system. So Brazil-China Law Consortium can play a pivotal role in advancing these priorities. From my point of view, as a platform for scholarly exchange, it can produce a collaborative research that informs policy, anticipates legal challenges, and contributes to shaping the frameworks that support the bilateral economic relationship. By bringing academics' insights and practical expertise, this consortium can help ensure that this partnership not only adapts to global change, but also actively shapes it. So thank you very much. I look very much forward to staying in touch, and I'm pleased to share my contact details for any future collaboration initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. I think this was a wonderful introduction with very thoughtful insights to our discussion along this morning. I will pass the floor to Professor Shi Jianzhong for your talk. Do you have any presentation?
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Yeah, thank you. Just now I was on the bus with a poor signal. I apologize for this delay. This has caused. Since our in-person meeting this past March, we have engaged in several online exchange. I'm pleased to note that we have indeed held multiple online exchanges since March. During this period, Justice Benjamin visited China. It's very regrettable. I was in UK at that time and missed our opportunity to meet you. Meanwhile, the international landscape has undergone significant shifts. This further underscores the importance of legal cooperation between China and Brazil and the critical roles of the China-Brazil law school allies. I deeply appreciated Justice Benjamin's strong commitment to our cooperation. As I have already taken up some of your time, I will now proceed directly to my remarks. China, recipient of its legal framework to confront contemporary trade challenges, must be grounded in the area-defining context, geopolitical evolution, technological revolution, and environmental constraints. Crucially, it must center on the collaborative needs with strategic partners like Brazil. We propose building a systematic approach across the three dimensions: real alignment, sectoral innovation, and institutional safeguards to respond to the global trade restructuring, while solidifying the institutional foundation for practical China-Brazil cooperation. The current restructuring of the international trade roles characterized by weakening multilateralism and strengthening regionalism, demand China use legal convergence as a pivot to balance multilateral obligations with the regional cooperation needs. At the multilateral level, accelerate domestic law revisions for the competitive with the WTO's rules. For instance, regarding the contentious developing countries' status in the WTO reform, the foreign trade law could introduce dynamic development bracing clause. This would explicitly link the applicability standards of trade remedies to industrial competitiveness, safeguarding the China's development rights while providing a legal basis for the coordinated stances with Brazil and the other emerging economics in multilateral forums. Concurrently, domestic legislation on the subsidies and the countervailing duties must be refined. Joining on the WTO's agreement on the subsidies and the countervailing of measures, China should elaborate a non-actionable subsidies list incorporating R&D subsidies in sectors like new energy and digital economy into the complaint framework to prevent subsidy disputes with trade partners like Brazil. At the regional level, a priority China-Brazil rules alignment within the frameworks like BRICS, RCEP, and other seasonal agreement, just as the BRICS common rules on the trade facilitation to achieve a single certification, regional mutual recognition in area like customer procedures and rules of region. For example, concerning agriculture's products, for example, soybeans, meats, consisting of over 13% of the bilateral trade. China's law on import and export commodity inspection could add a clause. For example, BRICS partner culture, mutual recognition of the quantities standards clause, simplify the inspection process of Brazil's agriculture imports. Simultaneously, bilateral agreements should clarify the pathways for aligning Chinese agriculture, machinery, and electronics with Brazil technology standards, dismantling standards and barriers. Technical progress and environmental changes are receiving trade. China must proactively construct the legal system for digital and green trade, opening new avenues for the China-Brazil cooperation. In digital trades, resolve the balancing act between cross-border data flows and security, building upon the data security law and personal information protection law, establish categorize the cross-border data flow list for non-sensitive data in China-Brazil cooperation, such as commercial transaction, legislative information, implement whitelist management models with data localization exemptions, clarifying in bilateral agreements for core data in AI and blockchains collaborations, created dual channel security assessment to ensure the data sovereignty while meeting Brazil's demands for technological cooperation in digital economic development. Furthermore, it has rules for digital intellectual property protection, refining the copyright law and patent law to specify ownership and infringement criteria for cross-border digital works and software, providing legal safeguards for cooperation in digital content just as 50 tanks at the center. In grey trade, ambit carbon constraint and the ecological synergy clauses revise the regulation on the import and the export and tariffs to introduce a dynamic carbon tariff adjustment mechanism, gradually impose carbon footprint accounting requirements on energy-intensive imports. Currently, negotiated green trade mutual recognition system with Brazil. For instance, concerning sustainable Brazil's agricultural product on the rainforest protection certification, such as certified coffee, beef, incorporate eco-label mutual recognition clauses into the supporting regulation of China's environmental protection laws, reducing trade costs for green goods. Additionally, embed green technology transfer clause into China-Brazil Energy Cooperation Agreement, use domestic law to define the scope for compulsory licensing of new energy technology patents, facilitating the development of a PV, wind power, and other technology in Brazil. Geopolitical uncertainty necessitate a more resilient and enforceable legal framework, requiring strengthened institutional foundation in dispute resolution and rule updating. In dispute resolution, build a multi-tiered, diversified system, amend the law on the application of law in foreign-related civil relations to end a choice of long clauses for the China-Brazil trade disputes, encouraging partners to choose applicable international rules of bilateral agreements both countries participated in. Simultaneously promote establish BRICS commercial dispute mediation center involving China, Chinese, and Brazil legal experts for preventative mediation of the trade frictions, reducing the over-reliance on the WTO's dispute settlement mechanisms. For frequent anti-dumping disputes in the bilateral trade, establish a fast track review channel within the anti-dumping regulations, shortening evidence submission deadlines for investigation into Brazil's bulk commodities like agriculture products and minerals, enhancing the transparency to reduce the trade barriers. In dynamic and adjustment created monitoring evolution of a revision loop led by Ministry of Commerce, established a China-Brazil trade law monitoring committee with legal, industrial, and academic institutions, issuing quarterly China-Brazil trade law compatibility reports to identify legal conflict in areas like tariffs, standards, and IP. Furthermore, explicitly define a dynamic revision of a procedure for foreign-related economic and trade regulations. In legislation's law, allowing target revision to clauses concerning major trade partners like Brazil based on bilateral consultation. This prevents domestic law lag from hindering cooperation. For example, if Brazil adjusts its mineral export environmental standards, China could swiftly review administrative matters for the mineral resources export to ensure the compliance alignments. The shaping of Chinese legal framework at its core is a quest to balance ruling-making influence with the cooperative inclusivity amidst global restructuring. For strategic partners like Brazil, legal synergy is not merely a tool for trade facilitation, but an institutional forging development partnership. By aligning multilateral and regional rules involving in digital and green provisions, and refining the disputes resolution and mechanisms, China can enhance its resilience against global trade challenges. Simultaneously, it injects the legal certainty into China-Brazil cooperation or industrial chain complementarity and sustainable development ultimately enable the transition from a major trading nation to rule-making power. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Shi. It was wonderful. Thank you for your comments. I think we will reserve a moment for questions in the end of the final panel, because we are very short on time here. So perhaps if we could pass through the next panel, which will be composed of, we'll talk upholding multilateral trade statements. Okay, this will be the next session. Professor Yang Gohua and Professor Shi and Professor Marilda Rosado. If we could start.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Thank you. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Professor Li Jichen, for your invitation. And also thank you very much, Li Jichen, for agreeing to sharing my my outline to you. I'm using my cell phone. It's not that convenient for me to use the sharing document. Jichen, are you ready? Jichen, are you ready?
I think Giovanna will do that.
Okay.
Yeah. I think Giovanna will share that outline.
Yeah, could you please? Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. So while we are waiting, let me just give you an outline of my 4 or 5 points. My title is Trade Law Cooperation between Brazil and China. It's a shame that I've never been to Brazil, so I know very little about Brazil. I don't think I can have a lot of good advices for the trade law cooperation between two countries for the government, for the academia. But I do have some points to share with you while we are waiting for the sharing of the document. Let me just go ahead. My first point was that whether you have, all of you have realized that today there is a telephone call between two presidents, between China, from China, and from Brazil. Two presidents made a phone call today. According to the press release, I recognize that 2 sentences which could be relevant to our topic today. In the press release, it was mentioned that both countries, Brazil and China, will support for multilateralism and free trade rules. Support for multilateralism and free trade rules. When I, as a WTO person, when I read this, I am thinking of WTO because WTO is a multilateral organization. WTO is a perfect example of multilateralism. And also WTO is under crisis at this moment, as our first speaker said. So at this moment, the support for multilateralism and free trade rules are so important. And another sentence I recognized was that both countries say that China and Brazil need to have good cooperation in BRICS. BRICS is a very good forum, so we need that. So here, when I read to you the two sentences I recognized from the press release by two presidents in the telephone call. Actually, as a matter of fact, I'm not coming to here to share with you any information, any ideas, advice. I come to ask you questions. I'll ask you for your advice. So here is my question for this one. Why both countries, the presidents of both countries call at this moment? Why? I said that the WTO is under crisis. And also there's one thing I didn't say was that maybe both countries, China and Brazil, are facing the tariffs, very high rate of tariff from the United States. I don't know whether I'm right. And I also believe that you from Brazil have recognized that also today, the United States and China announced a joint statement on a bilateral agreement on the tariffs, which is the moratorium or the truce or the suspension of the tariffs, higher tariffs were extended to another 90 days. It was announced today. I didn't know that there is any similar agreement between Brazil and the United States. Maybe not. So once again, my question: why both countries, the presidents of both countries, call at this moment? I have some guesses to share with you, but I'm not quite clear. My second point. Let me come back. The first point was about the telephone call between two presidents today. My second point was that also today, Brazil files a WTO case against the United States tariffs. I don't know whether you have realized that. So today, Brazil files a WTO case. The case number is 640. 640, right? 640 means that there are altogether 640 cases in the WTO already. So that is called the DS, dispute settlement case. 640 was a case filed by Brazil against the United States. So I don't have my slides slides shared yet, but I'll not go to the details of this. So let me come to the question under this title, under this case. My question to you, my Brazilian colleagues, was that what is the use of winning a WTO case or filing the WTO case? Everybody knows that WTO dispute settlement is not working well, and the appellate body has been destroyed by the United States 5 years ago, which means that the two-tier system does not exist. There is a panel first tier only. So for Brazil and United States, Brazil filed a case against the United States for the U.S. tariffs. Even if Brazil won this 640 case, United States would not agree to change its tariff. Let me repeat. Even if Brazil won this case, United States will not change its tariffs. So my question to you was that what is the use of your country to file a case or to win a case? Of course, you will win, but what is the use of it? So this is my second title, second point, and second question. My third point is about the Brazilian statement against the U.S. tariffs. It was made, let me see, when that is July the 16th. July the 16th, that is 3 weeks ago. The title is called Letter on United States Tariffs, Joint Statement by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Development, Trade and Services of Brazil. So once again, this is the letter by John. This is the joint statement by two ministers. One is the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and another is the Minister of Development, Industry, Trade and Services from Brazil. So in this interesting letter or joint statement by both ministers back to July 16th, that is 3 weeks ago, in paragraph 2 of the joint statement, I recognize a very interesting expression, a phrasing, says that the Brazil has engaged in good faith dialogue with U.S. officials in search of alternatives to enhance bilateral trade. And Brazil repeatedly requested that the U.S. government identify specific areas of concern. And if I translated that into everyday English, it means that Brazil repeatedly asked the U.S. government the same question: what do you want, right? So here, thank you very much for sharing. The screen must be very, very small. Letters must be very small, but look at the paragraph 2, which I was reading. So this is I'm very curious, right? What is the negotiation, right? Brazilian government repeatedly asked the U.S. government, what do you want? Let me know. But anyway, you continue to the paragraphs, you realize that we are still waiting. Brazilian government minister said we're still waiting. We have not received any responses from this government yet. So that is curious. So my question here, since I don't know anything about Brazilian government, why you have a joint statement by two ministers? This is very rare in China, or it never happened in China. A joint statement by Chinese foreign minister and trade minister, no, never happened. But why do you have a kind of a joint statement by two ministers, both ministers, of the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Minister of Trade? That is very curious. The fourth, and I hope this will be the last one, is the so-called multi-party interim appeal arbitration arrangement. Our first speaker mentioned that already. I think that is, the WTO appellate body does not exist anymore. So there is an interim appeal arbitration arrangement was established back to 2020. That is 5 years ago. And so we have 10 arbitrators. The first pool, what we call the pool, if you could screw up, you see the picture, group picture. We have 10 arbitrators. The last one was me, Yang Guohua from China. And the sixth, let me see. The sixth one is Jose Alfredo Gracia Lima. Jose Alfredo. He was the used to be the WTO deputy delegation head and also ambassador to European communities at the time. So Jose. And the second pool were replaced in May of this year. Right now we have a second pool. I stayed. So Yang Guohua from China, and we have a third one, Anna Caetano. Anna Caetano, a very experienced lawyer from Brazil. I think she's from São Paulo, or I don't know. She just joined us. She just replaced Jose Alfredo. She's a very experienced trade lawyer. So what I wanted to say here was that, Brazil and China are working very closely in the WTO dispute settlement, right? WTO apparently does not exist anymore, and there is an interim arrangement for appeal arbitration. Brazil and China are working very closely. They contributed arbitrators, and we, both of us, Alfredo and me, Yang Guohua, both so heard some cases, one or two cases. We decided some cases. So here is my question. Although Alfredo and Anna are my colleagues at this moment as arbitrators, so how do you decide your candidates? Alfredo and Anna were both nominated by Brazilian government, of course. How did the Brazilian government made the decision to select Jose first, and then Anna to replace Jose? How did you decide your candidates? I have some cases, but I just want to get your ideas, your opinions, your confirmation on this issue. The last point is it could be a conclusion, and the cooperation for governments and academia between China and Brazil. As I said at the very beginning, I am not in the position to make any recommendations for either government or academia for Brazil and China, because I've never been to China, never been to Brazil, and I even had very little contacts with the academia from Brazil. So the last point or the conclusion was that I really hope I could learn from you and visit Brazil in the future. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Wang. It was really pressing questions you posed to us, and obviously the answers are not easy to understand or to formulate. But let's move to the next panelist. So, Professor Amanda Ataidi.
Thank you, Professor Scarliana. Thank you for the invitation to join this event, such a great opportunity to discuss Brazil and China, specifically with trade issues. So our job here is to discuss how to uphold a multilateral trade system. So this could not be more timely, as previously mentioned, because of the context that Brazil is now inserted into. So the current international trade architecture definitely faces profound challenges, specifically with the rise of international unilateral measures. Also, the increase of the resort to industrial policy, and this also brings challenges on the intersection between trade and antitrust laws. Also, there are growing geopolitical tensions and a erosion of trust in multilateral dispute settlement, as previously mentioned by our Chinese colleague here on the issues that has been rising on the multilateral dispute settlement of the WTO. So on this environment, the credibility of the multilateral trading system depends both on the institutional reliance, but also, in my opinion, on the active engagement of the members. So Brazil, as a large emerging economy, a founding member of the WTO, occupies a unique position. So Brazil, in my opinion, has a weight to influence the discussions on the global trade and maybe has the legitimacy to reach developed and developing countries' perspectives. So the idea here of my short intervention will be to focus on Brazil's role on the WTO, on the G20, and also on the BRICS forum. So on the first perspective about Brazil at WTO, Brazil, it's important to highlight that Brazil has historically played a very proactive role on the WTO, both at the norm setter and also on a coalition builder performance. So since all the rounds, the negotiation rounds, and also as an active user of the dispute settlement system, Brazil has consistently demonstrated that even middle power countries can shape multilateral trade rules when acting strategically, always taking into consideration a rules-based system that ensures predictability and trade flows for investments. So there are a few aspects that would be possible to point out about Brazil's engagement on the WTO. So the first one was also mentioned by my colleague, Professor Yang, on his previous intervention, was Brazil's championing the dispute settlement mechanism. So Brazil has, over the years, been one of the most active users of the dispute settlement mechanism, both as a complainant, but also as a respondent. So reinforcing the credibility of Brazil as a rules-based actor. So in the current context of the appellate body paralysis, Brazil has reinforced its trust on the multilateral system, joining initiatives like the multi-party interim appeal arbitration arrangement, the MPIA, showing that Brazil really commits to maintaining a functioning dispute settlement process. So presenting panels does not modify Brazil's past behaviors considering the WTO arena. And also Brazil has joined plurilateral initiatives with cautious. So while Brazil has joined negotiations on e-commerce, on investment facilitations, it has also stressed the importance of inclusion and ensuring that plurilateral agreements do not undermine the multilateral character of the WTO. So there is, in my opinion, a balanced approach that Brazil reinforces in its actions on a dual identity on the plurilateral, but mainly the multilateral system. So this was on Brazil's perspective on the WTO, but also it's important to highlight Brazil's participation on the G20. So the G20 offers Brazil with a more flexible and high-level forum to address trade alongside broader macroeconomic and development issues. So there is the possibility on the G20 to develop other issues that are typically not covered by multilateral or plurilateral agreements, such as food security, such as sustainability and trade. So not joining the G20 provides Brazil a dual perspective. First, to ensure on the G20 the language on the WTO reform, that WTO remains a strong, covering dispute settlement, restoration, rules updates, and development dimensions, but also to develop on new issues that are not covered by WTO. So the importance of keeping agri-food trade flowing, resisting to exports restriction, enhancing transparency in agriculture's markets, and also environment and climate considerations that seems to be gaining space on the G20 trade discussions. So notably on the 2024 G20 presidency, Brazil placed social inclusion, sustainability, and multilateralism at the center of the agenda, reaffirming its willingness to connect trade with a broader development goals. So after presenting Brazil's perspective on the WTO and G20, finally, my final point would be Brazil's perspective on the BRICS, on a South cooperation or alternative considerations about Brazil's perspective. So Brazil in that forum engages a more politically aligned space that may reinforce and complement multilateral commitments. So with BRICS, Brazil may focus on issues that has also been discussed on the G20 and the WTO, such as facilitating trade among its members. So through customs cooperations, trade facilitation measures, discussing on reducing non-tariff barriers. So BRICS may deepen intra-group trade, which remains relatively modest compared to the bloc size. There's also, of course, the possibility to join efforts on the position of the need to restore the multilateral system. And there is also the discussion that Brazil is not specifically restricted to trade, but there are other initiatives to related to financing, infrastructure, connectivity, and logistic products that facilitate commerce. So Brazil's approach within BRICS seems pragmatic, although political. So it seems that there is the possibility to develop and reinforce the multilateral system, but also to develop new topics and new financing opportunities for Brazilian markets. So finally, as a sum up, so despite Brazil's active engagement, Brazil faces challenges, of course, in upholding multilateral trade system, such as navigating the geopolitical fragmentation, the increase of unilateral practices by countries, balancing developmental needs with market openings, and also, of course, the need to update trade policy for new issues such as digital trade, climate-related trade measures, supply chain resilience that are now central to the trade agenda. So as a sum up, at the WTO, Brazil may be a defender of the rules, a user of the system, and advocate for reform. On the G20, Brazil may be a consensus builder, linking trade to development, sustainability, and macrosystem stability. And finally, at the BRICS, Brazil may be a promoter of a cooperation and also to global governance. So upon the multilateral trading system is not simply about preserving the status quo. It is about adapting the rules and institutions to the realities of the 21st century. And Brazil's credibility will depend on its capacity to combine principle and rules-based multilateralism with a pragmatic coalition building across diverse forums such as G20 and BRICS. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Professor Armanda, and thank you for addressing indirectly some of the questions that were posed by Professor Wang. And I think we are having the dialogue that we were wishing when we decide to make this webinar. So I will move to the final section, which will discuss the role of universities in advancing fair and sustainable trade. I would pass the floor to Professor Dr. Shi Jianzhong.
Yes, I'm here, Professor Oscar.
I'm sorry
It's
if
me.
I think I'd say your name wrongly, but please correct me.
Yes, okay, never mind. Okay, I will share my slides. 1 second, please. Okay. Thank you, Professor Oscar, and thank you, Professor Li Juqian, for your kind invitation. And it's my honor to have this kind of opportunity to discuss the role of universities in China and Brazil in promoting a fair and sustainable international trade system. We know that in recent years, global trade has got more uncertain since the tariff tensions of 2018. Import and export costs have raised a lot, and the production plans have been disrupted. Meanwhile, new entry requirements keep appearing, such as the stricter product standards, the tougher environmental rules, and more complex technical and data regulations. For many developing countries, the challenge is not the will to comply, but proving compliance with limited resources under terms set by others. This raises 3 key questions. How rules are made, and how costs are shared, and how compliance is verified. We know that from the fairness perspective, international trade rules are often shaped by a small group of leading economies. Small and medium-sized enterprises find it hard to take part in making the rules and bear upfront compliance costs. In trade disputes, the burden of proof and the procedures are usually decided by those who create the rules. This creates a clear imbalance. Those two sets, the standards often have the advantage in explaining and interpreting the rules, and countries or companies with more resources can use the compliance itself as a way to block others from the market. And from the sustainability perspective, the challenges are just as real, like the demands to cut carbon and the labor protection, the environmental protection are rising. But the supply chains still suffer from the information gaps. We often do not know the true sources of emissions, the real results of the improvements, or how the costs are shared. As a result, companies that make real changes may not gain the rewards, while those that do nothing may avoid penalties. Together, this leads to a third challenge, the uncertainty in implementation. We have standard detailed, but the standards are inconsistent. We have the commitments are made, but evidence is weak. We have the investments are large, but the returns are unpredictable. China and Brazil share some same challenges and also have different strengths. China is strong in the manufacturing and the digital infrastructure. Brazil is strong in agriculture and ecological resources. Both have many small and medium-sized businesses. Both have strong universities. So universities can help connect knowledge and action. So we must see the main contradictions. Understanding these trade clearly is the first step to know how the universities can respond. The first contradiction is between the fast pace of the new trade rules and the capacity to adapt. A few countries push rules quickly, using their strong systems and influence. Many developing economies need a long internal process to assess industrial impact, coordinate among agencies, revise the related laws, and give the industries time to adjust. This is not inefficiency, but a gap in policy process and resources compared with the rule setters. This gap means less voice at the start of the rulemaking and very little time to act once rules are set. Universities can help by tracking rulemaking speed and to advise when to prepare earlier, so responses are more active. Second, there is a gap between the goals and the resources. We know that the fairness and the serviceability do not come for free. Many standards require costly monitoring systems, strict certification, and ongoing labor inputs. In developed countries or large companies, these costs are easier to absorb. But in developing economies or smaller firms, high requirements can limit production, exports, and room for information. Also, the innovation. The result is that standards may be accepted on paper, but applied only selectively in practice. This gap often comes from difference in technology, market scale, and the institutional support. Universities can help by offering practical ideas to lower these barriers. The third is the conflict in how rules are applied. When many rule systems exist at the same time, standards for fairness and for the sustainability come from all kinds of global agreements, regional deals, and industry rules. But these rules are not always compatible. In practice, a company may follow one set of rules but break another. Governments may make promises that clash with each other. Businesses may have to follow the same checks again and again, wasting time and money. So this kind of inconsistency increases friction and makes the rules less trusted. Universities can help by finding where the rules overlap and where the conflict. They can also suggest ways to align priorities so that resources go to the rules with the biggest impact and the highest risk. Overall, these three contradictions are closely connected. A timing gap raises execution costs. Limited resources make rules conflicts harder to solve, and conflicting rules cut the time for adjustment. Together, they create a negative cycle. Universities can often offer a clear framework and judgment basis, helping set priorities and focus resources. So responses are orderly, predictable, and supportable. So with this challenge in mind, China and Brazil can draw on their universities' strengths to act earlier, adapt later, better, and coordinate more effectively in global trade governments. First, we can share the information and agendas early. Chinese universities work closely with the government and industry so they can track new trade rules trends quickly. We know that the Brazilian universities have the wide links in Latin America and the South-South networks. Connecting these channels can support new issue earlier and allow both sides to state positions while the rules are still forming. This can reduce time pressure for later adaptation. Second, we can develop execution models for different stages. Brazil has low-cost, sustainable practice in agriculture, forestry, and community work. China has ways to cut costs in manufacturing management and digital monitoring. This can produce step-by-step models for different stages and industries. This avoids copying blindly while making the core principle easier to share. It also offers practical ways for more developing countries. The third one is to start small pilot projects for rule alignment. We can pick one or two value chains, such as farm products or specific manufacturing lines. Compare market roles, finding different overlaps, make a table showing which roles are already met, which need small changes, and which require higher level coordination. If the pilot's results are recognized by the industry, they can be expanded to more sectors. This will cut repeated work and make the execution clear. Overall, these three cooperation paths match the key challenge from the earlier. They use universities' independence and research skills to give clear, practical solutions, not just general talk. This way, China and Brazil cooperation can reduce the pressure at home and create examples others can follow for a fair and sustainable trade. So the Chinese and the Brazilian universities can build through their cooperation network. We sure that fairness and sustainability are not simple slogans. They are real pressing issues. If our universities can truly work to complement each other, we can not only ease the institutional pressure at home, but also offer the practical solutions that other developing countries can adapt. This is not only an academic responsibility, it is also a necessary step towards a more inclusive and stable international trade system. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Shi. I think you gave the roadmap of how we can contribute at this moment. I think it's a very important reflection. So I will pass the floor to Marilda Rosado, who will have 15 minutes to her presentation.
So, good morning to all. First of all, I would like to thank Fundação Getúlio Vargas for picking up my name among the many brilliant academics that we have, and also welcome the Chinese colleagues in this very interesting panel. I chose, and I'm going to share the presentation with you, one topic within the very wide subject of trade. I chose the field where I've been active my whole life, maybe more than 40 years, in the energy industry. And the energy industry is very important for the trade, of course. In the Brazilian system, we have a very strong presence of energy. When I try to put the presentation model, the presentation disappears. Oh, it's here. Okay. So I'll try to cover some of those view graphs very quickly because I couldn't reduce more. I tried to do it smaller. So I talk about cooperation in the field of energy. So and in my activity as an academic, I feel that for the past years at the Rio de Janeiro State University, we had many students that studied and are practicing lawyers now, either in the government or international companies, or being professors themselves. I will not comment each of these because I'll go slowly through them. So the approach in my academic activity was always very interdisciplinary, because that's what happens when we work so long in the field as well. So it's very hard to talk about energy without bringing together many topics. And although I'm a professor of private international law at UERJ, I always went through research groups that studied various topics. And one of them is governance. And within governance, focusing the energy field, we would bring together all these concerns about environmental and climate changes, economic development, and of course, also trade. And there we created first a center of study called CEDPetro, which was more focused in the hydrocarbons, of course. I usually say that I used to be an hydrocarbons lady, but then, of course, in the past few years, we changed our focus, and now we have a wider group which promotes, also with an interdisciplinary approach, both at the undergraduate and graduate level, studies in all fields that are listed there. Of course, we cannot talk about all of them, but we'll share some views about what's happening in Brazil and some of the data, Brazilian figures that will help us understand what maybe we can contribute in this exchange of experiences with China. So the first thing that we have to comment is that Brazil is in a very privileged position in what concerns the energy metrics. As you can see there from this view graph, of course, it's very important, the oil and gas activity in Brazil, but we have already not only the renewables, but the very innovative programs like the biofuels and like our tradition of the hydropower, which has many problems, of course, social and environmental problems, but adds significantly to the diversity of our energy metrics. I did a little bit of research with my students about China. That's why there are some view graphs here, but I must confess very humbly that I know very little about China, although I had some opportunity to study the BRICS. And so I'm even more excited with this opportunity of getting to know more about China in energy, which is my field. But if you have a look there, we see how complementary we can be in the sharing of experience concerning biofuels, concerning the renewables, and also, as you may see in the next slides, about the natural gas. So in our research, we can register that all of these efforts that are being done nowadays of investment in clean energy, I admire this and honor this information that more than 1/4 of those investments come from China. So we can see that already today we see a leading position for Brazil and India in the developing world. So all the countries are connected to these reduction goals, and we have, of course, in a way, because of the energy metrics, reached a favorable position, but we have a very long task concerning deforestation and restoration of our forests. And of course, in all these challenges that we have, we need cooperation. We need to face those challenges. And those challenges also boost opportunities. I'm not commenting each of them, but I would like to comment that in Brazil, we have developed a very important cooperation framework between the oil and gas companies and the universities, because we have a strong program for research, development, and innovation from the companies that can choose to invest what they would pay the states as royalties to the universities. Our university already has such programs for geology and engineering, and we had in the past and are developing now a possibility of investment into the law school and in programs that can bring innovation. The commitment of Brazil is very clearly stated by the presidential chief of staff then of $35 billion until 2028. So data of Brazil here that I'm not commenting each of them, but we have in this energy field already 86 business groups is investing in Brazil. And as I say, trade encompasses a very strong element of oil and gas. And Brazil has had a turning point after its production of the pre-salt. And nowadays, instead of being importers, we are exporters of oil. And that's the source of the development ministry of Brazil. We did some research, but it was so amazing what we saw about the Chinese university. That's very humbly, I just honor with this photo about the Silk Road program. And then I must acknowledge, at least once I wrote a paper with the students about the BRICS, and I was so much interested about this Belt and Road Initiative. And from that, I saw that natural gas, although we are not an official member, it could be a very important issue for cooperation. So I also would like to note that in Brazil, when I entered the oil and gas industry, the gas discovery was not welcomed. My colleagues even treated it as a bad news. And then they had to reinject the gas. And nowadays, it's a revolution in the natural gas industry in Brazil. And we are going through all the challenges of the regulatory modernization. We have many new gas laws. We didn't solve the challenges. And we finally, after 2021, hope to be finding the right track to bring this revolution of natural gas in Brazil. So I am quoting as an example of how the universities can contribute the issue of development of CCUS. More specifically in Brazil, one small company did this first project, and as a lawyer and as a professor, I wrote a paper on this aspect of that we developed in Brazil. Is less than a CCUS that's treated as a priority within the associations devoted to the area. For instance, I would quote the Association of Energy International Negotiators, which is the AIEN. They have a group, a task force about CCUS, but in Brazil, it's more the question of the natural gas storage, hoping to solve the big challenge of the lack of pipelines that we have and the challenges of transportation. I could quote the problem that we have in Roraima, which was out of the system, and nowadays had a crisis with the supply of Venezuelan gas that was stopped suddenly, and they were using very polluting ways of bringing energy to the state. And after the discovery by a private company in Amazonas state, they are bringing the gas through road in liquefied natural gas to Roraima, and solving with this very challenging way the problem of supply. So concerning the BRICS, when I studied first this new energy paradigm, we realized that with another student who was co-author that BRICS countries were still excluded from the positions of leadership. And then we saw there a big opportunity to start. And now going further with those studies, we realized that BRIC countries are already, and this source is not an academic source, it's The Economist, 43 of global oil production. So I do believe that the field of energy is a big promise in what we can develop in our universities, both in China and Brazil, and try to learn more about all those researches and studies that are being developed. We developed with my students this view graph, which hopes to summarize optimistic view of what we can do and trying to grasp the initiatives that already exist. And I like this way of phrasing it, a community of share the future. And so we hope at our university, which is also a state university, and prestigious in our law school as well. We have 2 ministers in the Supreme Court from our professors. So China is already such a good trading partners. And I think maybe with this idea of the Belt and Road Initiative, we can elevate the level of our cooperation. So I tried so much to reduce and to fit in the 12 minutes that maybe I exaggerated. So I'm very happy to be here, and thank you very much again.
Thank you, Marido, for your very concise but very informative presentation. I think also you went to a very substantive areas where we can have more collaboration. We had established a questions and answers moment now, but I'm very concerned with the timing, mostly of our Chinese colleagues, because I know it's starting to become late at night. So perhaps we should move directly to Professor Li's considerations and conclusions, and then our planning of our next meeting. So Professor Li, it's wonderful to have you here, and please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Oscar. So as to coordinator, I think you make much more effort than me for make this webinar so successful. I think for this webinar, I may not make any conclusion. It's just a start. I think it's just a start. But I'd like to make some points here. First, I'd like to thank all the speakers from both sides for Brazil side, Professor Shelley, Professor Amanda, and Professor Merida, and also Chinese side, Professor Shi Jianzhong and Professor Yang Guohua and Professor Shi Yewei. All of them make a very, very excellent speeches. And thanks for Benjamin, Chief Justice Benjamin, because of his coordinator and preparation, so we can have this webinar. And for a long time, we prepare this, especially our Brazilian side, our colleagues, make a much effort for select speakers, and also to make the agenda, the schedule, coordinate, and send a clear agenda to all of us and prepare the meeting links. But as we all know that for a webinar, we may face some technical issues from our side, but I think it's a very, very successful have this meeting, and both sides speak general picture, and also speak very precise issues, including the trade relations, China and Brazil, what kind of things we can do, and how important the trade relationship is, and what kind of framework we are going to proceed and advance. And also, I noticed that both sides make proposal for universities, and we need to make a network and make our proposal suggestions to government to make the trade relations not only between China and Brazil, but also for the global perspective, for the global development in WTO, in BRICS, in the G20. All these things, I think it's a very meaningful, very successful, and I hope we can, proceed this kind of webinar. It's resolve our, long trip that we can see clearly each other on website and exchange informations quickly. I think this is minimal. It's successful. Thank you so much. I think this is a start point, a new start point. It's also the first webinar we have. We are looking forward to have another one in the future. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor Li. I would make your words mine, thanking all the presentators. I think they jump immediately to proposal. That means a lot in terms of a group that is willing to solve many of the problems that we are facing these very challenging times. I think also we have some practical issues to be working out here. So I will just point 2 or 3 very specific things that perhaps we could move here. First is regarding our website. We organize a draft of this website. We will be sending to you immediately the English version, so for you to check, correct, and perhaps we could put in the web as soon as possible, as soon as you agree with the content. Also, we will send you a proposal of a logo to our endeavor. And we obviously, with your agreement, would put on the web the content of this first encounter, this first web, because it was recorded. And if there is no problem with you, I think from our side, it will be wonderful to have this as the first product of this initiative. I think the third point is for you to present the program of the next website. The next webinar that will be organized from your side. So perhaps we could later find out a date for that. And this would be very practical issues that we have to contemplate and I think present in our next meeting. Regarding the very interesting, provocative, substantial proposals that were presented by both sides, perhaps we can, I loved Professor Marilda's presentation when she said, well, with my students, we organize this and that. Perhaps with our students, we could organize and synthesize some of the proposals that were made here, since we don't have time for the questions and answers to be immediately debated. But perhaps we can do a synthesis of some of the discussions that were presented here. I think our students would love to do that and would make a great job. So we'll be proposing some of the synthesis as a result of this seminar. So I don't know, Professor Li, if you want to, complement or present some ideas before we finish.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Oscar. Yes, as we discussed the last time, we are going to have another webinar hopefully by the end of this year, let's start to prepare that from today. And actually, we have prepared in advance something, but it's not settled. We can exchange email to settle the date. And as I understand, the next time our topic is environment. Is that right?
Perfect.
Yeah. So trade and environment are very important both for China and Brazil, but also important for the world. So I think that is also a very interesting topics, and I think Chief Justice and professors, they are all interested in that. I forgot to mention that my colleagues in the international office, they also coordinate many of the administrative things. I think the support from my university and your side are very important for our successful webinar and exchange our views. Thank you all so much. Yeah.
Thank you. And I would like to say my last thanks to Professor Maria Lucia Padua Lima, who's quiet there, but she was the one responsible for putting all this together. So thank you, and see the next time in I think Beijing.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Nice, and thank you all.
Hopefully we can see you soon. Yeah.
Someone
Thank you.
else?
Yeah.
Thank you all.
See you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good day.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much. Yeah. Have a nice day.